Hi guys and gals, it's been a couple months since I've made a video. I've wanted to do a few, unfortunately just haven't been motivated. I personally like doing them when no one's in my room, so sometimes you'll see over my, this is my left, so this would be just showing the opposite, but over my left shoulder here, like I said, it's the opposite, so I'm actually pointing on my right. You'll sometimes see my brother. Um, I wanted to do a video about, um, another collector frustrations video. Maybe I'll do that tomorrow. I want to do more of these, honestly. There's so many things to talk about. I just wish, I wish I had, it's, I wish I did have the following of others just to engage in conversations. There's so many things I need to research, do, and get around to talking to. So many people I'd like to interview. Gaming topics, for example, like, uh, you know, I remember, I think, earlier? I think it was early, no, it was like a year and a half, Resident Evil 2 was announced, but most of you probably know, or I should say some of you by now, probably a long time after you watch this video, but Resident Evil 3 was announced in December. This is 2020, so Resident Evil was announced in December of 2019, being last year, only about a month ago. And, and then it's coming out in April, apparently. I wouldn't be surprised to see it get pushed back, but there's two great games. I'm sure there's more. I know Cyberpunk's a game that a lot of people are looking forward to, um, but me personally, I'm looking forward to Doom. I'm a huge Doom fan. I'm also a huge Resident Evil fan. So that's 2 months in a row. It's going to be coming out with awesome games. I kind of hate when that happens, because I really like to get into one game and really absorb, really get a feel for it before I get other great games, especially with those games that I really like to put a lot of time into. But this one's going to be a tough call. Uh, now, um, I get off the subject because there's so many things to talk about. I'm just saying that's an example of things I want to cover. I would look at the other podcasts, and honestly, I don't think that a lot of them cover these particular subjects. They're very deep. I think they might have some research to do with them. Uh, excuse me. But I think it's more because uh, it's negative. Like today, people want to be positive vibes, and it's like, look, this is it's just like with sports. I listen to my friend who listens to sports, and it's just like just covering sports when people they do uh, excuse me negative things, negative news, like uh, drafts, things that people say or they do. This new baseball thing coming up with more scams, and why? Tell me something. Why is it that my throat always gets dry when I'm on these videos? I had some water earlier. What the hell? Um, anyway, you'll see that I'm dressed pretty warm in Pennsylvania. It's pretty cold right now. It says it's only 23, but my phone says the real feel is 8, which I believe actually feels colder than that. Like 23, it feels like it's in the negatives, but what do I know? Well, like I was saying, anything to be covered with gaming topics. That was uh, that was just an example. And it's like I need to suck a piece of candy or something like that when I'm on here. Put one of those root beer barrels in my mouth. Um, but anyway, Yeah, like I said, you'll see that I'm dressed warm. Uh, so today's topic is I'm going to do a series, a small series on why retro games are so expensive. Uh, I, there's a variety of reasons, and I think that people don't really realize them. It really doesn't come to mind. Um, I mean, we see games as games, and we see games today. I mean, they sell in millions, and they're just a dime a dozen. So, it really doesn't dawn on people the variety of reasons that there are and aren't. But in some ways, eBay is to blame. eBay is where people go to get any kind of, you know, pricing on games. But the problem is that uh, eBay can be manipulated. I've said this before, that people can list things at whatever prices they want to list. People will have their friends, or they'll have multiple accounts, and they'll bid things up. I'm not sure if some of you have seen that. I was out on my forum, actually, that Mario Copy World Championships. Some of you know the Nintendo World Championships in 1990 or something. I think it was 1990, if I'm correct. So the gray cartridges. There's a couple hundred, as I remember, more than that, and the uh, once again, maybe, from now on, maybe I'll just bring up a damn bottle of water here. I just brushed my teeth. Usually, I have a sweet tooth, so usually my mouth salivates when it comes to sweet things, but I don't know if it has anything to do with the weather, or maybe the fact that I always spit with my toothpaste, but good lord. Anyway, um, where was I at here? Like I said, why body? Why do you wait till these videos till you want to misbehave? Um, yeah. Now I'm just going to carry some water when I do this. I can't even talk for 2 minutes, and I get a dry throat. Anyhow, I was talking about the Nintendo World Championships as an example, and I mean the cart. It's neat because when these cards go up for auction, especially Nintendo games, they even get little news articles about them. I remember being on Atari Age, and people were posting them, and it's even neat to see them about Atari carts, because they're even harder to find, and no one really talks about them too much. There are a few that command a lot of money, or I should say demand a lot of money, but you very rarely see those. And then the people who have them have to know what they are, whereas Nintendo gets a lot of coverage. You're more than likely to find more information on a Nintendo cartridge than you are an Atari cartridge. Um, but uh, so anyway, this particular auction was bid up. I remember watching it just for the heck of it, and it was like almost 100,000. And if you look it up, you look up 100,000 for Nintendo cartridge or something. I think Pat the NS Punk had it on his channel. But if you look it up, you'll actually find that some people on YouTube had talked about it. And, of course, people are like, anyway, I'm sorry. Um, you'll find that, some people are like, hey, fuck, this cartridge went for 100,000. This went for a lot of money. And, this is a lot of money. And as an experienced collector, someone who loves that kind of thing, I mean, that it's not worth that much money. Especially if you know the cartridge. I wish I could, I wish I could do the video editing. Sure, I understand it's not hard, but I'd put a picture up here, to either my left or right, and it was that cartridge that the label has been ripped off. It has like Mario, someone, little kid probably wrote Mario on it or something. That's because it was probably, I think it was one of the games, Mario 3, if I remember. There's 3 games on it. You'll see it also. Uh, AVGN, the Angry Video Game Nerd, did talked about it. You probably know him if you're familiar with YouTube. um, but uh, anyway, as an experienced collector, somebody who has an idea of how much that stuff costs, because I'm constantly looking at prices and comparing them. I mean, they do go up, they do also go down. But at the time, they were selling for $7,000. And the person who wrote the article said that with the increase, they didn't see it going more than $11,000 because there are a few gold cartridges that sold for more. And I think at the time, one sold for 20,000. So you figure, and there's I think a handful of those. So you figure one of these cartridges was probably worth no more than $11,000. Well, you know, obviously the price went through the roof, and some people were, of course, saying, it sold for 100,000, which it never did. Of course, the person who has it, you know, I remember messaging them, and they their was comment was I think like, oh, this is worth a lot of money, and oh, last cartridge, last cartridge sold for 20,000 or something, 40,000. And I was like, no, no, it didn't. Uh, just because you see the price, it's bid up. A lot of times people have their friends, like I said, or they don't pay because they're in a bidding war, and then they're like, yeah, I'm not going to pay. So, there are some other factors which I'm kind of mentioning now as to why things just go through the roof. Um, but, and of course, like that's another thing. I come across these people who they have something and they just want ridiculous amounts of money, and I'm just getting off the subject a little bit. Maybe that's something to talk about. But I remember a guy having like copy of Resident Evil 2 sealed, and it was still sealed, but it looked like somebody had used it for a hockey puck, and it was just like, dude, I could go to eBay and show you how much it goes for. It only goes for $200. I mean, and that's the most it goes for, and that's a good condition. Yours is cracked and beat up. I think people just buy certain things, and they just want these ridiculous prices on it. But we'll get back to that sometime later. Uh, I think my point is this, and if you haven't seen it, like I said, there's so many variables. Uh, in eBay, I mean, you can't blame eBay for it being that expensive, but it's just that old adage. That's what it sells for. Let's just say this: the problem is there's no market, and if there was a big market for it, uh, anyway, if there was a market for it, then there'd be a dictation. Uh, for example, a lot of times when I should say, for example, when markets are small, things could be all over the fence. Uh, for example, with video games, even when it was a young market back in the 90s, you know, it, these prices to games actually, I do remember certain times games I don't think were dictated as a price. So there were times I remember seeing Genesis games for one place would have them for 50, $60. Another would have for $70, $80, and it was just like, There was no market saying that it had to be a certain price or people wouldn't pay it. Same thing with video game systems. Sometimes they came out. I remember the Saturn when I saw it at Ames down where I lived. I understand Ames was kind of all over, I heard, but it came out for $500. I remember seeing that. Um, I also remember, I understand that the 3DO came out for a lot of money, and I think it was $600, $700. I mean, for example, that the market didn't dictate that now you can't be more than $500, and even that's a lot. Uh, like you can't be more than $500, and even that I understand is, excuse me for repeating myself, I do that, but if some of you remember, and I specifically remember the year 2006 when the PS3 came out, I was going to have all these bells and whistles. I mean, they really, really puffed it up. I mean, really made it, you know. And at first, I remember thinking, man, nobody's going to buy this. It seems a little pricey. I shouldn't say that. I thought people were going to buy it. And I figured, well, we'll see. And it came out. And like the first month, it just sold out. The first, I don't know, it was month and a half, but like the first month solid, it just sold. And then it dropped off. Like nobody was buying it. At first, Sony needed to come up with demand, and like nobody was buying. And that's a different story in itself. Um, because Sony, later on pushed it later and started selling a lot of consoles. But that's the year Microsoft won, which some people won't admit. Uh, but hey, it is what it is, and um, it just showed that people weren't willing to pay that price. So you come out with the Microsoft came out with I think it was a couple of years ago. I think came out with the Xbox One X, and it came out at $500. And I guess it sold, but not very well, so they lowered the price to 400. So like I said, 400 seems like that price point. And the reason I'm saying this is because that there's a market for it now. There's a solid market for games can't be more than $60. Systems can't be more than $40. There's like a solid market to base that off of. The market's that big where they can test it and see, what people are willing to pay. Whereas years ago it wasn't as solid. But with retro games, because like I just said, there wasn't a big market for it. There's nothing to back them against. The other thing too is, you know, if you want to play something original, you have to buy the hardware for it. You gotta buy, a Super Nintendo, and you gotta buy the cartridge. Now, fortunately, they're coming out with these mini systems, so now you don't have to pay a ridiculous price to play Earthbound like you used to. You used to have to pay like $200. Um, and certain other games that I think if the Genesis Mini, if I understand, it has Crusader of Senti on it, one of the rarest games for the Genesis, and even rarer yet is a Tetris copy. I think they said only 3 copies of that exist for the Genesis, but like things like that. I mean, now they're releasing things that could possibly bring down the price. But I mean, like I said, the big issue here is that there's no market. The only market remains is the used market. A market like Amazon, like I said, mainly eBay. So people don't know what to test the prices at. They just go to eBay and go, oh, well, it says this. Well, that's good enough for me, and that's it. Uh, as some of you, as some, or even, I should say a lot of you uh, would even know, that I lost my train of thought. That I was saying about the market. Uh, okay, I'm sorry. As some of you would know, there are a variety of factors that an experienced person would know with the game. You know, being a label, it's torn, it's faded, it's cornered, is somebody write on it. You know, how's the cartridge itself? You know, does it sound like something moves it around? I mean, it's just, you know, like the whole thing. It's just, you know, excuse me, like, I'm choosing my train of thought here. But the point is that uh, there's so many things that you know that you don't see on eBay. People will be quick to be like, oh, I saw something go for this, or I saw something go for that. Well, number one, anyone could list it as a price. Number two, are you taking out the factors that, you know, was it a box? Was it brand new? Was it this? Was it that? And also the fact that some people just make things up, you know. Oh, they try to guilt you, like, oh, I saw that go for that. And it's like, no, you're just trying to get an extra buck or something like that. It doesn't matter. You know, I'm not here to, you know, if I would say, you know, dealing with people is the worst thing ever. But if you want to make some extra bucks, there's plenty of ways I could tell you to do it, you know, side jobs and whatnot. But the point is, like I was saying, there's just no market for it. That's the biggest problem. The biggest problem is there's just no market. And while you may think, you know, oh, well, it's obvious there is, well, this is just used stuff. This is stuff that we're guessing. And like I said, you know, with eBay being manipulated, two people can go on there and go, oh, you know, I want this game, and another person somewhere wants that same game, and they get in a bidding war, and all of a sudden, you know, hey, that game's worth this amount of money, and it's like, no, it's not really. Uh, but that's generally my point. That the biggest thing I think of, the variety of factors, are that one of them, and I think the biggest, is that it's just not market. There's not something to match it against. There's also other factors that you should consider that no one's making them. You know, if there were 200,000 copies of a game made, nobody's making them anymore, and you don't know how many are floating around. Some people still have them in their basements or their attics. Other, you know, the other place they're probably at is in a landfill, unfortunately. But that's the sad fact. Um, and even foreigners, people buy, you know, like even from America, people buy Japanese. You know, we're foreigners, we buy Japanese games. People buy American games. People buy European games. Games from all over the world. So you know they could be floating around anywhere. That's a variety as well. That's a consideration too. Uh, and you know, so you figure that quantity versus the people who want them versus the ability to find them. And like I said, there are certain games where, you know, the only way you can play them is with the original hardware, unless you're doing the ROM thing. People have mixed feelings about that because it's technically illegal unless you own the game, but still, you know, I really can't blame people for, you know, hey, you want to play Little Samson? Only $1,000. I don't blame people. That's a lot of money to play a game. So you're stuck. Uh, but like I said, that's one variety of factors in why they're so expensive. It's just, I think the biggest picture is when it really boils down to it, they're not being, like I said, there's a variety of factors, one of them being they're not produced, they're not being reproduced. People who own the copyright, some people don't even know they own them. I've heard of stories like that. So they're not being produced. You can't go anywhere to play them, and then you got to find them. So it just also comes down to a matter of convenience. Are they on they're on eBay? Well, it's convenient to buy it. Uh, Before I go, and like I said, there's no market for them, especially the lesser known consoles or games, even though some of them are good. Right now, at this moment, I want a Jaguar. I mean, I have at least one working one. It's in the garage somewhere with a bunch of my boxes, but I don't feel like rooting through them. I mean, I could go through it, but it's just such a pain in the ass. I almost want to buy another one. And, they're going for like $200 now, you know. And as being as a huge fan as I am of the Atari Jaguar, if my memory serves me correctly, uh, there were, if my memory serves me correctly, there were 200,000 produced, but 100,000 sold. And like I said before, that number seems like, hey, sure, if you had 200,000 consoles, yeah, that's a lot. But in the grand scheme of things, it's shit. Uh, these days, a game has to sell 2 million to do good. And that's if it does good. So this is 10% of that. And this is, of course, back then it was a smaller market. So now the demand's up, and they're selling for buku bucks. So if you have, and the worst part is everyone who, another subject is people who they demand good money, even though they don't even know if it works or it doesn't work. They still want 100. One person, they still want 150 for it. Like, it's crazy. I get it. As a collector, I totally get it. And especially I've seen so many people just sell their stuff and they just don't want to deal with it anymore. And I don't blame them. A lot of the collectors now that I see that do have a lot of stuff they've been doing it for decades. But anyway, um, those are for many other videos. I'd love to talk about it, but of course I'm tired. The only time I really get to make a video is literally 6 in the morning. But everything, I just figured, I just make this video, and somehow it makes these videos relax me. They make me great. I love talking about it. But anyway, like I said, lesson, uh, like I repeated 50 times, the lesson is that there is no market, and it's hard to explain all the little factors, but basically there's no market, and there's no dictation of price, and there's no competition, etc., etc. And that's it. Hope you have a safe day. Hope you loved watching my videos. I'd really love to hear your comment. And have a great day. And, well, thanks for me. Oh, what did I say? Rate, comment, and subscribe. And thanks for watching my video. To the 2 people who actually watched it. All right. Have a great day. Bye.